cancer deaths are increasing faster among Asian and Pacific Islanders than any other ethnic or racial group. Yet a dangerous myth persists that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders rarely get cancer. That myth could have cost Susan Matsuko Shinagawa her life. Instead, it changed her life. Susan is a third-generation Japanese American, born in 1957 in California. In 1987, she moved to San Diego and was enjoying her life there.
In June of 1991, I found a lump in the upper quadrant of my right breast. And so I did what you're supposed to do, what they teach you in the breast self-exam course. I watched it for a couple of months. You want to see if it changes with your cycle, if it grows, if anything happens. And I decided that I ought to get this thing checked out.
Susan had a mammogram done, and then a sonogram. The lump was solid instead of having fluid. She went to see a surgeon.
And he says to me, Susan, you've got diffuse fibrocystic breast disease, which means you have lumpy breasts. And I asked him, well, I really would like to have this biopsy. And he said, Susan, you don't have to worry. You're too young to have breast cancer. You have no family history of cancer. And besides, Asian women don't get breast cancer. So I wrote him a note the next day and asked him, wouldn't he please do a biopsy for me? He found me later in the hallway and he said, Susan, I can tell you, you got to trust me. I see thousands of young women like you every year, and you do not have breast cancer, and I absolutely will not do a biopsy.
Susan went to see a second surgeon who told her,
Susan, I agree with your surgeon. I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that you do not have breast cancer.
But Susan wanted to be 100% sure and insisted on a biopsy. The biopsy was done October 8th. The next day, the surgeon called.
He said to me, Susan, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you've got breast cancer. And at that point, I felt like my world fell apart, and suddenly my life changed. It kind of flashed before my eyes, as they say. My first reaction, I remember being, oh my God, I've got cancer, I'm going to die. And then I thought, oh my God, I've got cancer, it's going to be a horrible death, I'm going to commit suicide. And my third thought was, oh my God, I've got cancer, I better do something about it. That all happened, I'm sure, within the span of 2 seconds. I made an informed decision that I wanted to have a mastectomy, and that was okay with me because I never identified myself by my breasts. It wasn't that important to me not to have one, and they're not that big anyway.
While recovering, a volunteer visited her. The woman, a breast cancer survivor, was a retired Caucasian grandmother from a well-to-do community. Although well-trained, the woman had nothing in common with Susan, except that they both had cancer. It was a defining moment.
I remember thinking, what in the world is she talking about? She had no concept of what I was going through. I thought, this isn't right. It occurred to me that the thing that we really needed in the United States that we didn't have was a survivors network for Asian and Pacific Islander cancer survivors. We don't talk about our cancer. We don't like to talk about the disease. And much of it is rooted in culture. So if I talk about cancer, I'm going to get it. If I think about cancer, I'm going to get it. So it's better not to talk about it or think about it.
Susan began to speak out. It was unusual for an Asian woman to be so bold. In September 1997, under Susan's leadership, the Asian and Pacific Islander National Cancer Survivors Network was born, co-founded by the Reverend Frank Chong, a cancer survivor from Hawaii. Today, members of the network are speaking out across the nation. They are cancer survivors, family members, advocates, healthcare providers, and researchers who are deeply concerned about the issue of cancer in the Asian and Pacific Islander communities.
The goal of the Asian Pacific Islander American National Cancer Survivors Network is to dispel myths, reduce disparities, and to provide hope. So we have a wonderful, active group of people. There are about 20 of us But 20 of us can't do this for all the Asian Pacific Islander cancer survivors in the country. We need to have everybody helping us. We want to make sure that people understand the reality of cancer and not just what the myths are, like cancer is contagious, and that cancer is an automatic death sentence. The myths that Asian women don't get breast cancer, those are myths. We want people to know that those aren't true.
What can you do to dispel those myths? You can speak out. You can tell your story, inspire others, and be a part of the Asian and Pacific Islander National Cancer Survivors Network. You can make a difference.
And I remember my mom's reaction, that she wondered what she had done while she was pregnant with me that made me get breast cancer when I was 34. And I remember thinking, my God, she's been thinking this all this time, that it was her fault. And how angry that made me, that she had to feel like she was the reason why I had breast cancer.
Speak out. Join the network.